What's going on, everybody? It's your Ath Geek here. Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat has been released on HBO Max, and I'm going to review it for you guys because I've seen the movie now a few times, and, you know, being somebody who grew up in the 90s, being somebody who was in the movie theater in all of Mortal Kombat 1995, seeing those characters from the video games on the screen for the first time, it was an amazing experience. There's so much nostalgia that's tied around that. But coming into this 2021 version reboot of Mortal Kombat, I definitely had very high expectations because we were, treated to a couple of trailers that looked really good. And we were treated to some elements of the movie making process for this film that promised to stay true to many of the core elements of the video game characters themselves. And I, for the most part, think that there was due respect paid to a lot of the characters in Mortal Kombat. But overall, I had a lot of problems with this film that when you add them all up, it really does come down to a film that will please many hardcore fans in the most minimalistic way, in my opinion. But let's jump into the review for Mortal Kombat, and we're going to start with the first portion of the film. Obviously, the first 7 minutes of this movie were released online prior to the release of the movie, so we got a little bit of a taste of what was to come, or what was supposed to come, with this film. So with the start of this film, you get Hanzo Hasashi living with his family in Japan. This is back in the 1600s, and it's, by all accounts, following the major broader steps of, the Hanzo Hasashi origin, the Scorpion origin, and it kind of shows the beginnings of the feud between the Lin Kuei and the Shirai Ryu. And, this was an amazing portion, an amazing start to the film. It really did kind of draw me in. And I felt like I was ready to take this ride. I was ready to get into Mortal Kombat. Hiroyuki Sanada, he does an amazing job at portraying just the physicality of Scorpion in this. He has the look, he has that grimace on his face. And in those first moments of the film, it really sets up what is supposed to be a hell of a joyride for anyone who has any kind of loose understanding of this game franchise and its storyline. But it's crazy because from that point, once that scene ends, once we see Hanzo Hasashi murdered by Bi-Han, who is Sub-Zero in this, who is played by Joe Taslim, we really go from that point in the movie directly into the story with Cole Young. And this is crazy to me because it almost felt like the first portion, the first action scene with Scorpion and Sub-Zero was filmed by somebody else. It felt like there was a completely different style of cinematography in that portion of the film compared to the rest of the film itself. Now, from there, you go into a lot of the beginnings of this film. From that point, center around Cole Young, and Jax and Sonya. One of the major problems I felt in this movie was that things just moved around too much, and there was never really enough time spent on any one character or any one individual outside of the first moments of the film. Now, I felt like the cast for the most part in this was a good casting. I felt like everyone who was in it was cast well for the character they were playing. And, obviously you don't have to have the best acting chops in the world when doing a Mortal Kombat movie, but you do have to have an element of storytelling that is going to allow us to give a damn about these characters. And I think that for me, it's hard to really express this enough, but I feel like that is the major failing of this film, is that there isn't a point in this film where I really truly cared about anything that was happening in regards to the story, in regards to the pacing. Nothing felt especially like well done in those regards. Now, as far as the aesthetic goes, I did like the aesthetic of a lot of the scenes in the movie. I felt like there was a good attention to detail paid to how each character looked, the settings, the environments that they were in. I felt like they all fit pretty well into what we know as far as the Mortal Kombat world is concerned. Again, we come back to all of these things that looked good, but when you put all these pieces together and you try to tell a story and you try to give a narrative in the movie for the audience to latch onto, I felt like that was missing. And I felt like that wasn't something that was missing in the 1995 Mortal Kombat movie. Now, I watched the 1995 Mortal Kombat about 2 weeks before this movie came out on HBO Max. And, even to today, the movie is obviously aged. And when you look at, a lot of the kind of campy dialogue of the film, it was a film that didn't take itself too serious, but it did have serious elements that you could get behind in the movie. The characters that were used being Liu Kang, Sonya, and Johnny Cage in the 1995 film, I think that those characters were a good combination and had a good chemistry amongst each other, that it did give you a team to root for in the 1995 version. Shang Tsung, played by Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa. I felt like he set himself, this is where you find yourself in a little bit of a hole as a new movie that's trying to reboot a film that does have a particular popularity about it with the 1995 Mortal Kombat. Because at the time, that was like the best video game movie that had ever come out. And it was considered a well-done film, even in its campiness. It's not perfect. Nobody's going to give it any awards. But the film itself did surely represent the essence of Mortal Kombat. And when you have a great villain who has the look, who has the appeal, who has the charisma, who has the terrorizing, menacing feel that Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa did in his version of Mortal Kombat, that's where you find yourself kind of trying to top something that maybe you won't be able to top. And I think that's what we fell into with our Shang Tsung in the 2021 version. I feel like this Shang Tsung was more of an M. Bison type. It felt like from the 1995 or 1994 Street Fighter film. It was more of a Shakespearean feel to him in the way that he talked, in the way that he communicated, rather than a menacing aspect. And I think that is really a shame, because that is what we looked for in our villain from Mortal Kombat. These villains in the video games are very menacing. They are very very dark, but at the same time, there's a certain level of charm to it. And with this Shang Tsung that we had in the 2021 version, I don't think he had any of that. I don't think there was any charm there at all. I don't think there was any menacing, there was no menacing nature to him at all. Kano was a scene stealer in the entire film. I felt like Kano was the biggest bright spot in terms of just the characters themselves. He was charming, he was funny, and he was diabolical at the same time. He was a scumbag, but he also was a funny scumbag, which, that gives you points when you're talking about building a character and developing a character in a way where, it's a true representation to the video game, but also it gives the audience something to really kind of enjoy themselves with. And that, to me, Kano was probably the brightest spot in the main characters of the film. So when we talk about characters, Sub-Zero is probably the perfect representation of his video game self in this film. I felt like Sub-Zero was menacing. I felt like if you just had Sub-Zero as the main villain and didn't even introduce Shang Tsung until maybe the last half as the overlord who was actually sent Sub-Zero on this mission to defeat the warriors of Earthrealm, I feel like I would have been okay with not seeing Shang Tsung until the last 10 or 15 minutes of the film, in the same kind of fashion that we saw with the movie itself, where he comes in to kind of deliver his soliloquy about why, killing his warriors does not stop Shang Tsung from going after the ultimate goal, which is to steal the 10th tournament for Outworld, and gives them and gives his character an arc and a goal that really does kind of fit to that menacing character that he should have been. I felt like Joe Taslim as Sub-Zero, and the way that he played the character, we could have just had him as our main villain throughout the majority of the film and focused in more on his pursuit of these other fighters and stopping them. I think that, that is probably something that should have been considered rather than to bring in a bunch of characters who, at the end of the day, we lost a lot of popular Mortal Kombat characters in the first movie, and they had, less than 5 minutes of actual talk time throughout the whole film. I think that Melina was a big blunder. I think that there was no reason for her to be in this movie if she was going to be used the way that they did. I feel like Cole, the character Cole in this movie, was completely fumbled. I think if you're going to set up a character like that and try to use that person as the avatar for the audience, I really believe that you got to do more than just give us, little basic family beats. Like, this guy was the most boring character of the bunch, and he's supposed to be the one that we're looking through his eyes to get into the experience of this movie. It just didn't work for me. I just felt like there was nothing there with Cole as the protagonist in this. I mean, he's essentially fitting in the space that Johnny Cage himself would generally fit in for the audiences. And really, it's interesting because with Mortal Kombat and with the 1995 version, when we're talking about film, I feel like you had all three of the main characters as that kind of avatar for the audience. I felt like Robin Shou as Liu Kang, there were aspects of his character that you could get behind. His drive for vengeance, to get revenge for the death of his brother. Johnny Cage trying to prove that he's not a fraud, trying to prove that he's actually a true action hero, a true fighter, somebody who's not just always thinking about himself and thinking about what he can get out of a situation. Sonya has that rough, tough military background. She's been hunting down Kano in the first film for years, and she doesn't have any problem snapping your neck with them nice, thick, juicy hips like she did in 1995. And, these were just, these were characters who you actually had a little bit of character building to kind of like see what they've gone through and see what they're trying to get to in this tournament in the 1995 film. In this 2021 version of Mortal Kombat, I don't think we have such a luxury. I don't think that we have all of the pieces. They mentioned things in passing, and then they never came back to them. And then, again, the pacing of this film was so awkward. We went from Sub-Zero going after Cole and Jax to now all of a sudden we're in Outworld, to all of a sudden Liu Kang comes out of nowhere and he's finding our team of fighters, and then from there they're training, and then from there they're fighting, and then it's over. It moved at a breakneck speed, but in a very unpolished way, if that makes any sense. But I think that most people who are big fans of the game are going to be able to look past some of those things because of the fights and the fatalities and the callbacks to the video game, the Easter eggs, which there were plenty of. There were plenty of Easter eggs. We saw Shao Kahn. We saw Sindel. We saw a number of different potential, characters to come in the future. We saw Nightwolf. So there were Easter eggs abound in the film. So there's going to be a lot of fan service that people are going to appreciate. I appreciated a lot of the fan service. And again, I had fun with the film for what it was, but I wanted so much more in way of world building. I wanted so much more in way of character development. And again, I feel like this is a situation where it felt to me like this movie was docked about 20 to 25 minutes of footage in order to keep it under that 2-hour mandate that we continue to see from Warner Brothers in their films. And now, if there has ever been a question as to whether or not this was something that seriously does affect how these movies are being made and how these creators are allowed to create within Warner Brothers, I think, and this is just my opinion, I feel that Warner Brothers hamstrung this movie to get it under the 2 hour mark for the sake of showtimes, for the sake of the dollar, which, hey, it's a business. I get it. But I mean, how well will that pay off for you if the next film doesn't give a little bit more room to breathe? I felt like there was no room to breathe in this film. I felt like the editing of it was so awkward in how things jumped and jerked around from scene to scene that it really didn't give the audience a chance to really just kind of absorb the moment and what was happening. I felt like the dinner table scene after their first round of training, I felt like that was a scene that needed more time to maybe tell us a little bit more about these characters. Give us a little bit more in way of what their ultimate goals are individually. I loved Kung Lao's character. I wanted more of that. Well, you guess what? Kung Lao's dead. He's done, at least for now. We may see him again in a future movie if they have more, but I felt like that was a wasted effort to have him in there for as little as amount of time as they did. He had high impact. Don't get me wrong. The guy did a lot of great work in the movie. He had some show-stopping scenes himself, but I think that, he was a character that should have made it into the next one without getting his soul sucked by Shang Tsung. Now, another thing I did not like about this movie, and to me, this was a travesty of travesties. So one thing that I did not like that really bothered me about this film, and this is probably the biggest thing that bothered me outside of, the gripes about character development, for me, not having more Scorpion in this film was a crime. And I don't mean having more Scorpion in maybe the sense of him being in their present time fighting with them or anything like that. I think that, with a couple of the quick flashbacks that they had where Cole just sees Scorpion's face or they show these quick scenes of him in the underworld, I felt like those scenes should have been expanded on greatly. And I feel like if there was potentially time cut from this film, that probably was what was cut, because we got very short glimpses of where Scorpion was in the underworld, how he actually was able to gain control over parts of the underworld in order to, have his presence and have his physical formation brought forward at the end of the movie. And the way that he explained it and being able to control them, I mean, that was basically the explaining of everything that happened to him in the underworld, or how his perspective of the underworld could be expressed. And I found that was just lazy. I thought that, if they devoted 5 or 10 minutes throughout the film to a flashback that kind of shows what he's doing in the underworld, how he's trying to get himself ready to come back. We saw these little short flashes of him in the underworld trying to, set up his dagger. You could see the dagger, the Scorpion dagger. All these things were they're very confusing because there's no context to what we're seeing at all. And I think that if you added a little bit more context to those scenes with Scorpion, that gives a little bit more to the film. It at least allows us to be excited and to prepare and to anticipate at what point will Scorpion show up to help Cole in this movie, because it was obvious that with those short little flashes that they gave us, that they were trying to allude to Scorpion's presence still being, heavy on the film, but it didn't feel that way because they were like 2-second things. Like you're just not going to get the audience into it like that. And again, that's just me speaking as somebody who loves the Scorpion character, who picks the Scorpion character first every time I get on a Mortal Kombat game. And, just generally, the way that this movie was advertised and the posters and everything like that, you would have thought that we would have seen more, even if we didn't have him actually in their realm fighting, but maybe saw short flashes of him actually speaking to Cole from beyond, maybe in Japanese, and Cole doesn't really know what he's saying. Those would have been nice touches to me that would have really given a little bit more depth into not only just, Scorpion and how his character is preparing to return, but also giving us maybe those scenes trigger Cole to not be such a punching bag throughout the course of the movie where he's getting beat up by everything that crosses him, lastly, when you get into the last act of this film and the fights that these guys had, you see a lot of fan service with these fatalities. I thought the fatalities looked awesome. I thought that the gore in this movie looked awesome. I thought that, the hard R for the blood and the gore was appropriate. But also felt like there were conversations where, like, for example, with Kano at the dinner table, where he's drops a couple of F-bombs, but he says the word sack instead of my balls when he's trying to insult Kung Lao and Liu Kang and tell them that they should be on their knees, giving him some service. Those were kind of quirky because it kind of felt like, is this full rated R or is this not? I felt like when it came to the blood and the gore that this was a hard R movie. I felt like when it came to the dialogue and the actual interactions between the characters that this was a very PG-13 film. The last part of this film, the last fight of this film, obviously between Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Cole, I thought that was an excellent scene. And, if that scene, also when you compare it with the first 10 minutes of the film, you can easily see that these were the fights, these were the big set pieces that were designed to really, swing for the fences, for lack of a better term, when we're talking about how Mortal Kombat was trying to impress the audiences. I felt like those two scenes were excellent scenes. I give full credit to the director. I give full credit to the actors that they did a great job in those scenes. But it's crazy because, if you look at a sandwich and you have a piece of bread on top and a piece of bread on the bottom that hold everything together, everything in between the slices of bread was pretty, I was pretty indifferent to it. And somewhat disappointed with how some of the things played out. But overall, I did have a decent enough time with the film, turning off all of my critiques and just blindly watching it and enjoying it as if it's a Mortal Kombat video game. It was enjoyable from that respect of just the fights and the gore and the blood and some nods to the lore. I did enjoy those. Scorpion, Sub-Zero, obviously the biggest pluses of the movie. Kano coming in right behind it. Kung Lao right there with Kano for me. And, from Jax and Sonya, and Jax, who I barely talked about in this, they were decent enough. They were good to build on moving forward. They didn't have much to do in this one, but they moved forward. And Sonya had more to do than Jax, but, we expect to see more or see them build off of that in the next film. Another thing that I really didn't think that they would mess this one up, but they didn't really give it its due, was we didn't hear the original Mortal Kombat theme until towards the end of the movie. I thought that was a little bit shocking. I thought that would come in to play in pretty good order throughout the film, but we didn't get that. So I was a little disappointed about that, but not anything that I would say it's a bad movie because it didn't have that in there. But overall, I guess for me, if I had to grade this film on a 1 to 10, with 1 being absolute garbage and 10 being an absolute masterpiece, I think I'd have to go with a 6.5 on this. And that's me wanting to believe that there's going to be more story to tell in sequels, and that they'll actually take the time to tell those stories when it comes. But I think overall, this was a 6.5 movie. I think there were some real issues with the story, some real issues with the script and the dialogue, but the action sequences, the blood and the gore, those help soften the blow from kind of having expectations set a little bit too high in regards to how the story would play out. I feel like for me personally, there was a lot more that I wanted from this film that I didn't necessarily get. And this is from a first-time director, so I'm not going to blast the movie and say it was terrible, because I don't think it was terrible. I just think it was very flawed. And, we'll look to see if the sequel will be able to kind of elevate this film franchise as it's trying to gain its footing. But let me know, what do you guys think? Did you see Mortal Kombat on HBO Max? Did you go see it in the theaters? Let me know in the comments down below. If you can, do me a favor, smack that like button right down below you right there so that this gets propped up on the YouTube algorithm. I am your Ath Geek, and I appreciate you guys so much for checking out my review of Mortal Kombat. Hope everyone has a good one, and I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.